Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another producer interview. Today, I have the immense pleasure of interviewing the fantastic, the phenomenal Veronica Antipolo, aka Sassy La V. Hi.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Amazing. It's a beautiful day to have this conversation.
Cool. Yeah. So you are in London, Ontario, and I am currently in Portugal. I'm so happy to be talking to you. I am interviewing you, first of all, because you have so many insights into personal storytelling, and also because I reached out to you recently to do a show together. So we are co-producing an event at the end of this month, June 2022. So we'll talk about that. So I wanted to actually, let me read your bio. This is how professional I am. So in terms of storytelling, you have been featured on CBC's The Doc Project. You've also been featured in the 23rd International Storytelling Festival representing Canada. No big deal. You've been published in Stories We Don't Tell, the book, which, if I recall correctly, was came from this Toronto-based storytelling show.
Yes.
And you've also been featured in Reader's Digest. And you also work around diversity. You were the live stream producer for CineFam Film Festival, celebrating women and non-binary filmmakers of color in 2020 and 2021. And currently you are the consultant for Cultivating Allyship at the London Arts Council. So, can you tell us how you got into live storytelling and when?
It was accidental. I don't remember, 2018, it was just months before my 45th birthday. And I worked at this job that, I had told people, this is where I work. And everyone said, amazing, pension, security, everything that you would want at, 40 something years old. And I had invested in it. I actually had always not really liked my career up to that point. I had been into in administration. And I had moved up and I'd gotten to this point, but then I lost my job at the beginning of this year. That year. And it felt like I felt almost stabbed in the back by life. That seems dramatic, but I did, because I was turning 45, security, pension. I did everything I was supposed to. And so I lay around in a depression for months. Mm-hmm. And I remembered my friend said, you should take stand-up, And I was intimidated by this. So I went on the Second City website and I looked at course descriptions. I looked at the stand-up description and I was too scared. I saw the storytelling description taught by Colette Mix, and I thought, oh, that sounds easier. So I took that and also simultaneously with stand-up. And it definitely was not easier, but I fell in love with it. I started doing both storytelling and stand-up continuously from that first day. In fact, I didn't even go to our graduation show for storytelling. I just went and performed. And I just kept doing more shows. And then I started producing them because specifically with comedy, I couldn't go to open mics because I have a daughter and I'm a single mom. And so I just said, oh, I'll just create my own timeline of shows that I can attend. And to me, it became really important to continue storytelling, whether through comedy or whatever art form, because it was the first time that I felt this empowerment, this self-empowerment to tell stories in my own voice, and actually be spotlit. That was the other thing. And so I co-founded a platform for women of color with Georgette Stubbs called Mosaic Untold Lives. And that was a show that we used to do bi-monthly and mostly featuring new storytellers.
Amazing. And so You mentioned hearing yourself telling stories in your own voice. What was your relationship with your own voice prior to that?
I had worked in corporate spaces for over 20 years. And I was also in administration. I was usually someone's executive assistant. So I worked with a lot of men in a very male dominant, white male dominant industry. And so it was a place where I was someone's right hand person. So I was expected to know what they were doing and think ahead and be proactive. And so I had to learn the business that we were in. So I learned a lot, but when I came to voicing an opinion, that was not my place. And there were times where I would state my opinion and it wasn't heard. And then, some exec would repeat almost exactly what I had said. And I thought, but I just said that. And it's something that, you think it's 9 to 5 or whatever your situation may be, but it's something that you get used to, unfortunately. And I think in other areas of my life, I had it embedded in me to second guess my own opinion. Like if I had an opinion on something that just even conversationally, I tended not to say anything. And so storytelling is something where you have to use your own voice for the sake of, well, how I learned it is for the sake of performance, to keep audiences engaged. And that was something new to me. I was like, what do you mean? I have to tell it not in third person. I have to tell it as me in my authentic voice. And it was a strange, scary feeling to do it. But because I wanted to do a good job, I did it. If I'm honest, that's really why I did it. I didn't think about, well, I'm interested in telling people this vulnerable side of me and in exactly my perspective. But I will say that when I did that first story, the whole time I was like, I just want to get off the stage. I want to get off the stage. I want to get off the stage. And I can't even tell you the point where it changed from something happened. And I can't even tell you exactly what it was. It was just almost this palpable feeling of this energy you could feel in the room, even while I was telling the story. And I thought I was imagining it. And even afterwards, because after you tell the story for the first time, I was just like, I'm just going to try and disappear into the corner. And then inevitably, someone always approaches you, 1, 2 people, and they always say, your story was relatable, or there's something in there that really touched me. And that was it. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that my voice mattered this much to someone else, or to me for that matter. I didn't know it mattered to me.
Beautiful. Can you tell us how you feel about doing another show online now that things have opened up and you have the opportunity to do it in person?
Well, funny enough is that from that first meeting we had about doing shows online is that I actually pivoted right to virtual after that, because I had some experience with Zoom, because I had been in administration. So I knew all the video conferencing tools. And I was one of those people who lost their job again due to the pandemic. And so I thought, okay, I'm just going to lean into helping other people produce their events and shows online. So that's what I did for all of the pandemic, and a little bit now doing some hybrid. And for all the resentment that people had switching online because we had to, and I always said, you know what, imagine it was landlines. This had happened during landline time. It would have been horrible. I said, so here's this platform, we resent it because we have to, but if you remember that on the other side are people, and this is just a tool you're not talking to your laptop, you're talking to the other person. That's what
Mhm.
you have to remember, because you don't think of that when you're talking on the phone to someone. Oh, I'm talking to the phone. You're talking to someone.
Right.
So my experience with online is I've actually met a lot of people. It's actually provided me access to people that aren't in my city, that are international. And I've actually made a lot of really good friends and connections this way. So for me to come back to real life, I think there's still an opportunity for both online events and in-person events as a hybrid, and just online events themselves, because for storytelling specifically, I actually find that for those who are hesitant to try something new, like storytelling, which is extremely vulnerable, this is sort of a nice way to sort of try something out virtually, because
Right.
you're missing that part where you physically walk into a room and you think, oh my goodness, I think I'm going to have a panic attack. This is a
Yeah.
softer way. You can come in, your video doesn't have to be on, and it eases you in. And I've noticed that I and have met other people who have tried things that I don't think I would have done in real life. So I see the benefits of doing things virtually, especially storytelling. When would we be able to meet like this? Because you're across the ocean now.
Mhm.
So
Exactly.
yeah.
Yes. Mm. And so for this show that's on June 24th, you found storytellers, I found storytellers, and I want to ask you about moving from Toronto to London, Ontario, and the storytelling scene.
Hmm.
How are people reacting to the idea of true storytelling in London, Ontario, which is a much smaller place?
Well, so far the people that I have talked to about true personal storytelling, it's hard to describe. I'll be honest. It's kind of hard to describe, especially for the storyteller and the benefits of it, because it's like, why would I tell anyone about my life?
Right.
However, when given the opportunity to talk about it further, there is a lot of interest, especially from the 3 storytellers that I have for the upcoming event. They are all in. And I think that it's something that will definitely grow here. There's a lot of, I think, residual things from the pandemic and being in those lockdowns where we're all still feeling kind of isolated, I think. I think that people don't really talk about it as much because there's no lockdown to place that within context, because it's like, I don't want to admit that I still feel a little bit isolated, because technically we can go out into the real world. But I'm definitely thinking that there is this this need to connect with people. And I think storytelling is something, specifically in London, where we have sort of diverse communities, different multicultural communities, but they're sort of siloed. And I think it would be a nice way for people to learn about each other on a personal level and connect that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like you are on a mission to bring true storytelling to them, and that's kind of cool.
I am.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, you mentioned that it's hard to explain to people who are wondering, why would I tell a story? Can you give like a couple of things that you do, a couple of answers that you do have for those people? Like the 3 storytellers that you found for our show on the 24th, they are first-time storytellers, correct?
Yeah, a couple of them are spoken word artists, but the first time storytelling in this format.
Right.
Yes. So in terms of how do you tell someone this is something you should do? It's such a hard sell.
Yeah.
It's a hard sell, but an easy win. With a lot of vulnerability involved. I think for me, like I said, I was very hesitant myself. And what it is, you know, even the storytellers I've had in the past, which have mostly been new to storytelling, probably half or more than half have told me, Veronica, I almost quit on your event. Because it's just the thought of like, I am going to tell this story about my personal life, especially when it comes to racialized the racialized community. It's not like culturally, it's like we don't talk about that. Just keep it to ourselves and smile and you know, pretend we're strong all the time. So I say it's, if you don't ever have the opportunity to tell your perspective in your own voice, there's something missing that people should be connecting to. Because all the time, I feel like as a woman of color, up until this point in my life, I had always sort of, you know, changed the words of my story to make it more digestible for them, or to not, or because I was worried that they wouldn't understand my words. And so I was always, in a sense, translating a story and diluting a story to them. So in a sense, nobody really knew who I was or what I was about. When I took storytelling, it was very much about learning how to find my words, because when you use someone else's words for so long, you forget. It's almost like you forget what you're saying. As my mother once told me, I think 10 years ago, because she's been in Canada for almost 50 years, she said something interesting that stuck with me. She said, you know what, I've stopped thinking in Tagalog and Filipino and translating it and speaking in English. I now just speak in English.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so interesting, because I thought, in a sense, that's what I'm doing. Even though English is my first language, I'm like translating my words, thinking about how this person will understand and giving them their own words. And it's hard because your story requires your words. And it's okay that there's an event in your life and there are other people in it who have different versions of that story, because your version is still valid because it's imprinted on you and made you who you are in this moment of time. And I think sometimes when you start telling different versions of your story, you hang on to this version of yourself that other people have. But once you're able to tell your version of your story in your own words without apology, there's something that, first of all, it almost feels like just before you're about to throw up, you're like, oh, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And then you sort of let your story go. And there's something like, it almost just feels like it just right there changes in you, because it's this feeling of being heard under your own circumstances that is so empowering, and that carries off the stage and off even that one event you ever do when you're a first-time storyteller. You could never do it again, and I guarantee it will change your life, because it did mine. It's not hyperbole. And also a lot of the other storytellers that I've ever worked with have told me, even 2 years later, someone I saw on the street by coincidence, she said, I've never told you this, but it literally changed my life just doing that one story.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe. It's just something you have to experience.
Well, I think you made a good job of trying to explain it. And do you know, I want to ask you, like, how different are you from the person you were before you discovered storytelling?
I'm definitely a lot more courageous with my voice.
Mm,
It's something you can't go back on once you start using it.
mhm.
I used to be a lot more hesitant with voicing my opinions on things because I thought they weren't valid, or I thought it's almost like I thought I was making up opinions. I said, Veronica, how would you come up with that? That's nonsense. Now I'm just like, no, it's come from something. I have a lived experience. I have
Yeah.
education, everything.
Mm,
Um, if I'm honest, I'm still working on it all the time, because when you live 40 something years like that, it's always a process. But I'm definitely more open to the process and find
mm,
that I become braver all the time, and becoming more unapologetic for my perspective,
yeah.
which as a
Ah,
woman is sometimes, always, it's something that we struggle with at some point in our lives or at different stages of our life.
hmm, yeah. And then for people who don't know, who have no idea what kind of story they could tell, like, do you think they have to have lived through something like, out of the ordinary, or, what makes a good story, or what makes a story worth telling?
No, it doesn't have to be traumatic. It doesn't have to be this big, like I need to have lived this life. No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I think there are stories in every moment of our lives, because storytelling, especially with the difference between stand-up and storytelling, stand-up is punchier. You just get concise as possible. Storytelling, I always say, is this chance to sort of float in the emotions and get into the details. So if you take a moment, and actually this is what I tell anyone who does workshops with me or does their story with me, is that you're basically taking this moment in your life, and it could be, say, in this week, and drawing it out. You're telling people sort of what's happening internally and externally. Because what I've learned through storytelling is there are moments that you could casually pass over, but if you look at the details of those moments and you sort of examine what's happening internally, even if it's if you meet a friend for lunch,
Mm,
there's something really beautiful in those moments, and that they're so relatable because they're just everyday moments. And that's really what connects people. It's not
mm,
necessarily, I went and climbed a mountain. That's
yeah.
terrific. But your emotions as you're, preparing for this and climbing the mountain, or whether you're meeting your best friend for lunch, those
Mm,
are all the things that connect us. And that's the important part. So it could be any story.
mm. Thank you. Cool. Well, I think that's an excellent note to wrap up on this cool conversation. Of course, I could talk to you all day. But so we have this event, this storytelling show that we're co-producing and co-hosting from two sides of the Atlantic Ocean on June 24th. It's at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It will be midnight in Portugal. And we'll have storytellers from a bunch of different places. So everyone do join us. I will put the link down below. And Veronica, I like you a lot. You're amazing. um, and I'm so happy to do the show with you. And thank you for talking to me today. I wish you an excellent rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Bye.
Bye.